All right, so for my second set of ideas that I want to present to you, it has to do with classroom management. Now, I had the full complement of education courses when I started teaching, and I'd had a methods course, but I never really was trained in organizational management in a really good way. Now, there may be programs out there that offer that, but I suspect they don't, and I think part of the reason they don't is very few people are as wonky as I am about organization, about making things easier by managing them well. This particular technique I learned from a woman named Harvilee Moore, who was an English teacher and drama sponsor at Deming High School when I first started teaching. I first started teaching in Deming. That was my first job. And she had a method for taking attendance. And when I first tried it, it didn't work very well because I still hadn't organized myself much. But after I did it for a couple of years, it became highly useful and valuable, and it really worked. And so I want to recommend it for any teacher who struggles with this issue of attendance. There's probably not a single management element that's more important than attendance. There are things that are as important, like good grade and record keeping. That's very important. But attendance has legal ramifications, and it's in almost all schools you're required to take it. Now, some schools will require you to record it at the end of the hour. You very rarely are asked to record attendance at the very beginning of the hour because students can be tardy and they get marked differently if they're late rather than missing. And that's very important. So this is what I did. I had them use an index card. On the index card, in the upper right-hand corner, they put the last name as it appeared in their school records. Now, if you think about that, it means that if someone's name has two last names as part of a Latino tradition, like Garcia Baca, you go with the name that appears in their official records. The students will know which name that is, whether it's Garcia or Baca. And that's the name that goes in the upper right-hand corner. The upper left-hand corner is the name they wish to go by. Now, it can be their first name. Many students prefer to be called by their first name. It could be their last name. I taught at a military school for a time, and military students like to go by their last names often, so they could put the same name on both corners if they wanted. And sometimes students wanted to go by nicknames. So the upper right-hand corner was for their last name. The upper left-hand corner was for the name they wanted to be called. Now, sometimes they would put down stupid things, like one boy put down sex god. I'm not going to call anybody that. Another boy put down daddy. Look, I'm not going to call anybody about my actual daddy, and we'll get into that later on. I've got some things to say about the name daddy and the way it's handled these days. But what that did is by putting that name there, it helped me begin to establish who they were in my mind. It made it faster for me to memorize their names. Now, underneath their last name, I had them put their ID number, and at the bottom, in the middle of the card, I had them put the hour number of the class. Like if they were in first hour, they put a 1 at the bottom. Now, what they did, I kept these cards near where I recorded attendance. They could be next to a computer. Near the end of my career, I had this counter with computer on it, and the computer was where I recorded the grades. So the card sat right next to the computer. They move the card from where they are at the beginning of the hour when they come in. They move the card to another spot, usually a back or a side desk or table. Now, once I started class, rather than call roll, I would pick up the cards that were still there and call out the names of the students. Is so-and-so here? Now, sometimes students would forget to move their card, and you're going to be thinking, students will move other students' cards. Yeah, if I caught them doing that, I let them have it. And my method of letting someone have it is I give them a talking to. And if you think that wasn't horrible, you don't recognize what I'm capable of saying. Anyway, they were only to move their own cards. They were to move them when they came in and go take their seat. But I could use the cards for other things. First, if the student was missing, I put the date on the card. Now, let's say the student was missing at the beginning of the hour but was just late. When they came in, I would put a T next to it for tardy. Simple. That way, when I marked attendance, I had a clear record. But even more importantly, the student had a clear record of what day was missed. On the card, it showed these are the days missed. And that really is effective. The other thing that I could do with the cards was they were utilitarian for doing all sorts of things. They were good for making groups. I could sort them randomly right in front of the students and create groups. They were good for drawing. Like if I had a student class that wasn't very participatory and struggled to answer questions, I could use the cards and just pull one out and say, hey, so-and-so. And it would be totally random and interesting and kind of terrifying for them, but not in a bad way. A little bit of zest for the class. The cards became extremely useful to me, and I even worked in different ways. I'd use different colors for different hours. Those index cards were such a wonderful, simple tool and so useful. And for someone whose inclination is messy, my inclination is messy, but I found that the more organized and careful I was with planning and execution of required materials, if I was organized and careful and had it figured out, then it always took less time. If you think about the number of minutes you spend taking roll in a day, if you think of taking roll as one of the jobs that you have to do, and it absolutely is, simplifying that process is powerful. The other thing is, it's one of those life skill things. You know, all of us have had jobs where we had to check in or we had to use a time card. Those cards mimic that. And preparing students for an adult life in this world is potent. It's really at the heart of what school does that doesn't get measured enough. School teaches young people more than simple skills. It teaches them very complicated social and practical skills that they will not get in a situation where there's only two people in the room. It's when you're in a big group that things get complicated, socially, professionally, politically. So, I strongly recommend using the attendance cards because I think you'll find that they are a really effective tool. If they don't work the first few times, don't give up necessarily. They might eventually serve you as well as they served me. And I'm so glad that I met Harvilee and I was able to learn that from her. And I'm so glad I continued to try to use it because eventually I got it figured out and it really worked well. So, have a good day, you gorgeous creatures.